If you'll please stand with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this glorious day and this beautiful community. We especially thank you for all of our blessings and the freedom and liberty that we so much enjoy. We ask for your strength and guidance tonight in our deliberations. And for all these blessings, and in your Son's name we ask, amen. Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a quorum this evening. I thank everybody for showing up, and I hope everybody's comfortable. Rather warm day today. Announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did receive notice of a community meeting that was not included in your packet. This is by Antioch Plan Developers, and it is a community meeting to be held on August 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Salem Fields Church Auditorium to discuss a proposed special use permit for a senior living facility that's on part of the church property itself. You should have received notice in the mail. They included notice to all the planning commissioners. And we have started to put all of the community meeting notices on the planning department website. So please feel free to reference that tab so that you can see all the community meeting notices at one time, because I know they do come in piecemeal. And we'll be just simply removing them once they have passed. This project is located in the Chancellor District.
Wanda,
Yes.
will some of us still be getting hard copies?
Yes, and did you have copies of this one, Paulette? They had indicated that they had sent them to the planning commissioners. Mm-hmm. So I didn't bring copies, but I do have a copy that I can hand to you this evening if you like.
Because you were referring to the use of the internet. And,
Yes.
And I'm still hard copy guy.
Yes.
So. Thank you.
The second item for the announcements is that we did go to the Board of Supervisors with the proposal to include a planning commissioner on the Transportation Committee. The Board of Supervisors had a few questions, and what they ended up doing was approving that so that a planning commissioner will serve on the Transportation Committee. And what we had discussed was that the chairman of the Planning Commission would make that appointment, but what they elected to do was to make the chairman of the Planning Commission be that appointment, with the alternate being the vice chair. So we don't have a Transportation Committee meeting scheduled yet. We actually still are working on getting enough members on it for a quorum, because a lot of the members, their terms expired recently. I'll be informing you. If we do have a meeting in September, I'll be informing you of that, but it is the second Thursday at 6 p.m. And those are all of my announcements.
And I thank the Board of Supervisors for that appointment. Next on the agenda, we have review and approval of the minutes. I trust everybody's had a chance to review the meeting minutes, and I'll take a motion on that if there are no comments.
So moved for approval.
Call the vote. Unanimous, thank you very much. Moving on to public hearings, R16-0002 Transferville Crossing.
Hey, may I have the floor computer, please? Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you stated, this is a amendment for a proffer request to proffers approved with case R06-05 with the removal of the cash proffer contribution that the applicant offered in accordance with the proffer guidelines in place in 2006. The Board of Supervisors approved the case, enabling the construction of 122 single-family homes. As approved, the applicant does not pay a cash proffer on the first 89 homes built in the project. The cash proffer is only applicable to the last 32 units. To be clear, if the applicant chooses not to build beyond the 89th unit, then no cash proffer will be paid by the applicant. The applicant is requesting the cash proffer be replaced with a proffer to construct road improvements. These improvements include restriping of Spotswood Furnace Lane at the intersection with Spotswood Furnace Road and the extension of Spotswood Furnace Lane to Route 3 with a right-in, right-out design.
Leon, if I may interrupt, do we have any reason to believe that they won't finish the whole project?
I have no way of knowing that, sir.
Thank you.
Given the value of the potential contribution to mitigate impacts on the public facilities versus the value of the improvements coupled with the ability of the county to complete the project, staff recommends denial of the request. The project will provide a benefit to the intersection of Route 3 and Spotswood Furnace Road during peak periods when students arrive and depart, and improve the function of the signal during peak school hours. Dan Cole, our transportation engineer, noted that the Transportation Committee has discussed this project as a future project to be added to the secondary 6-year plan. However, it was decided that it would not be added, and it would be better to complete projects that are currently on the list before adding any new additional projects. This particular project was one of 6 that was discussed as a group. The Transportation Committee has not weighed in on the merits of the developer's proposal due to the vacancies that Ms. Parrish noted on the Transportation Committee. And they have not had a meeting in the past several months because of those vacancies. If the project is not done by the developer, another funding source would have to be found. VDOT noted that this is a low-risk project that could be administered by VDOT or the county, and having it done within 2 years is feasible. It could be added to the secondary 6-year plan in October of this year.
May I, please, Mr. Chairman? Absolutely. You stated a few minutes ago that it was not approved for the 6-year plan. Why? Who didn't approve that? Are you saying the Transportation Committee or the Board of Supervisors, or who?
The Transportation Committee considered this project along with 5 other projects to be added, to potentially be added to the 6-year plan. And they chose not to add those projects as a group to the plan in order to complete the projects that are currently on the 6-year plan. So that was done by the Transportation Committee.
Just to clarify, they chose not to recommend those projects to the Board of Supervisors.
Was there a reason? I mean, they're not needed? Is that why? Or was that was not a priority, or what?
Their recommendation was based on a decision to complete the projects that are already on the list, rather than to add new projects to the list. Channel the money, the funding towards those projects that are currently on the list and prioritize those, and then consider new projects to be added in the future.
Okay, okay. Because you also stated low-risk feasibility. What do you mean by that?
Well, as a low-risk project, meaning it's not a very complicated project and it can be done relatively quickly and relatively easily.
That it can't be?
That it can be.
It can be. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is the exhibit of the restriping improvements at Spotswood Furnace Lane and Spotswood Furnace Road. Currently, it is striped with left and right arrows, and the proposal is to add dedicated left and right turning lanes as shown. And if you can see on the exhibit here, they're in black, so they're a little difficult, but essentially what would happen is within the existing right-of-way, turning lanes would be added, a dedicated right turn lane and a dedicated left turn lane would be added at that intersection. And you also may want to note that this is the entrance to the school parking area, and this is the entrance to the bus ramp. And this bus ramp is approximately roughly 450 feet out to the intersection of Route 3 to the east. This is the proposed connection to Route 3. Note it is a right-in, right-out movement with a raised median. So as you can see here, you'd have the right-in movement here. This would be the raised median here, and then you'd have the right-out movement here extending. And this is the short portion that would have to be reconstructed there. I should note that at one point in the past, this was a connection to Spotswood Furnace. Ideas to improve traffic flow during the peak school hours were discussed in 2011 with Dr. Troy Wright, principal at the Riverbend High School, the VDOT Deputy Stephen Noakes, and VDOT Central Region operational staff. The result was a memo from the area traffic engineer, Peter Hedrick, that outlined several options relieving the issues. The memo, which is in your packet. One option noted in the memo is making the connection to Route 3 from Spotswood Furnace Lane. The memo also included a recommendation to open an additional entrance at the north end of the student parking lot in conjunctions with changes to the internal circulation movements on school property during the peak hours. The approved proffers of the case there were $22,205 per unit for a total of $710,560. And that case had a CPI adjuster in it, which actually raises the number now to $834,000. The proffer proposed to replace the cash proffer is the reconfiguration of Spotswood Furnace Lane with striping, the extension of old Spotswood Furnace Lane to Route 3 with the right in, right out. And the proffer also has a contingency that the plans for approval and permitting would be submitted within 30 days of approval of the amendment. And there's also a contingency that if the applicant does not perform, then it would revert back to paying, they would revert back to paying the original amount of the proffer. So if for some reason they didn't complete the improvements, then it would revert back to what was originally approved.
Can I ask another question? After what? After you said how many homes, they'll have to build so many homes. And no, if they build so many homes, then they would have to go to the proffer. Am I correct?
Well, the way it's set up right now, they can construct up to 89 homes. They
Without
won't pay
the proffers?
Without the proffers.
Okay.
They don't start paying a proffer until home number 90. So from home 90 to 122, they pay the $22,205. The
Okay.
improvements are not connected with any sort of trigger in terms of number of homes. The only trigger for the improvements is that 30 days, if this case is approved, within 30 days, they begin the permitting and approval process by submitting plans to VDOT.
Okay. You had, go back to the other one, before this one, please. All right, you had cash proffer approved, 22,205. Is that today's per unit?
No, today it would be 25,805.
Okay.
This is what was approved in 2006.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may. You said the first 89 homes. Why does it start at that point? Are they by right?
Yes, sir.
They're by right.
Yes, sir.
The rest of them is what the county has given special permission, and they've gone through all the trouble to get this special permission to build these other 32 houses. So basically, I can't see why they wouldn't want to build the 32 houses, correct? Thank you.
Because I believe if they didn't, that they could really come out with $834,000. But of course, I don't know. I'm not in that kind of business, so I don't know.
But the way I'm looking at it is they went through the trouble and they paid money to get this special use or whatever permit they got to build these other 32 houses. I don't see why they would not build the 32 houses. That's been the crux of my questioning all along. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, continuing on. The applicant estimated that the value of the Spotswood Furnace Lane improvements would be about $449,000. We asked our capital construction staff to review the estimate, and they estimated the value around, $388,000, a difference of $61,000. Remember, these are just estimates, and they are not based on the county's nor the applicant's estimates are based on completed construction plans. So they are best guess estimates by both parties. Key findings, the improvements are supported by the schools. It would provide some congestion mitigation during peak traffic times. And the applicant can complete the improvements in a more timely manner than the county can. Key findings against, the difference between the CPI adjusted value of the proffers and the value of the improvements is $384,000. The county has an option to construct the improvements without the amendment, meaning we could indeed add this to the secondary 6-year plan and go through that process and make it a county project and then complete the project on our own. The amendment removes contributions to all other public facility categories, and it's difficult to determine the accuracy of the applicant's estimate because it is truly an estimate. It's not based on any detailed construction drawings.
Go ahead, sir.
You go back one slide. On this one right here, is that supported by the schools because of the convenience of getting it done quicker, or is there a safety issue there?
Well, I would say both, and now I want to caution when you say safety, it's more of a congestion issue. They have backups that occur during peak travel times, morning and afternoon, when students are coming and leaving the school, and so there's a backup on Spotswood Furnace Road. This would allow buses to exit the school property and go directly to Route 3 and be out of that intersection. So it would free up some spacing at that intersection.
Has there been any accidents there because of this?
I don't have accident counts, but it's a controlled intersection now. So
There are a number of accidents there.
There are?
There are.
Involving school buses?
Not that I know of, but of vehicles.
yeah, typically what I've heard is the accidents occur on Route 3 from people, I guess, slowing down and rear end accidents going west on Route 3.
Do we have a supporting documents from the school saying they support this?
We do. We sent an email requesting the schools review this proposal submitted by the applicant, and they forwarded it to their transportation people, the school principal, as well as one other individual, and they came back supporting the recommendation.
Is that in our paperwork? I didn't see it.
No, that was not. I didn't include that in your packet. It was sent to the principal, Kenny Forrest, the transportation director, and Sean Hockaday.
Thank you.
May I ask another question?
Absolutely, Ms. Lee.
Why did they say they supported this? What was their reason? Why are they denying?
Well, they support it because they believe it will help them relieve congestion at that intersection during those peak hours by providing an alternative for buses that leave the site. And,
It's like Cortland.
I'm sorry?
Just about like Cortland High School.
I'm not familiar with the
Okay, go
action
ahead.
at Cortland. But essentially what would happen is, in conjunction with the alternative route for the buses to get onto Route 3, some changes to their internal circulation pattern on the site. They believe this will help them relieve some of the congestion at those peak hours. Because right now, they have competing interests. In the morning, they have students arriving, and they have one entrance where students come in, and they have to manage internal circulation with parents dropping off, as well as students getting onto the site and buses leaving the site. And they all kind of end up at that same intersection. This improvement would allow the buses an alternative route and would not have to be in that queuing that currently occurs.
I'll go back to what I asked you earlier when it said not approved one of the 6. Then they must not have had much transportation committee. Is that what it was? That we were talking about didn't approve this to go on the 6-year plan.
Correct.
Okay. They must not have had very much information. I mean, if the school's saying, and, or whatever.
Well, the group of 6 projects were smaller projects. They were typically turn lane improvements at a number of different intersections. So, I mean, they had the information related to how those projects would impact the network. The 6 projects that they were considered as a part of a group, there was construction of a northbound right turn lane at Chancellor's Road at Old Plank, the extension of a southbound right turn lane on Lafayette to Lee Street, add a north and eastbound right turn lane on Lansdowne at Tidewater Trail. On South Point Parkway, modify the Starbucks crossover to allow left turns into the businesses on each side because there was a crash problem. Reopen Spotswood Furnace Lane at Route 3 was the 5th one, and then the 6th one was create a shoulder along Plank Road from Harrison to Catharpin Road. So those were the 6 projects that they considered as a group that they chose.
And I understand what you're saying. They wanted to finish those up. But my point is that, okay, if the schools are saying that this is a risk, but while ago it said, you stated it was a low-risk feasible project.
No, ma'am. When I said it was a low-risk project, I was speaking to the ability of the project to be completed. It's a relatively small project, and I use the term low risk, meaning it can be completed with county forces or VDOT forces in a relatively short amount of time. That was not related to safety or how it would improve circulation.
Okay.
Leon, for the $450,000, just explain to me again what they're proposing to do. What is the plan for that $450,000? What are we getting for it?
Okay, if you look at this screen, you'll see you get the dedicated left and right turn lanes on Spotswood Furnace Lane, a restriping. So essentially that's paint because there's right of way. And like I said, this configuration was out there at one point. So I don't know when it got changed to just a left and right turning movement. But so you get some restriping at that intersection. And then here you get a reconnection from Spotswood Furnace Lane to Route 3 with a right in, right out with a pork chop or median, raised median there in the middle. And
we don't get the driveway, the new student driveway to the north that's in Peter Hedrick's report?
No, sir. I did ask the applicant about that, and they stated the cost of constructing that would make it prohibitive. There is a pretty substantial berm to get out on the Spotswood Furnace Road there, and there would be the relocation of utilities. Right now, there's a utility pole that sits right in the middle of where that entrance would be located on Spotswood Furnace Road.
But there could be another location for the entrance.
It could potentially be another entrance.
All right. And has the school district committed to the recirculation plan?
They do have some circulation plan that they have in place. Like I said, the memo that Peter wrote was back in 2011, so they made some adjustments since then in terms of their internal circulation.
Well, and one other question I have, I guess I don't understand, in Peter's report, he's got no left in as you're heading south on Spotswood Furnace Road, and I believe that would be for the morning.
Yes.
So how does somebody heading south on Spotswood Furnace Road get into the high school without that left turn?
Yeah, when I read that, I thought maybe he meant no left turn for students making that left going into.
So a parent drop-off would still have to make that left, therefore not really alleviating the problem.
Well, the only relief you get there is you have fewer cars in that intersection because the students would be forced to the north end of the parking lot. So you would reduce the number of cars at that particular intersection because the students would now access the property to the north.
All right, and then for the new old entrance for the buses, that is a right in, right out, correct?
The new old entrance.
Where we tie into Route 3, not that one.
Yes.
Spotswood, right there.
Yes.
That's a right in, right out.
Yes, sir.
So do we have a bus count on how many? Because when you're going right out, you're heading west.
That's correct. I believe they said it was about a 40-60 split is the number I remember.
40 heading west, 60 heading east. Okay, and I'll defer any questions for later. Anybody else? Okay.
So finally, recommendation, given the estimated value of the proposed improvements versus the potential contributions to mitigate the impacts on capital facilities, coupled with the ability of the county to construct the proposed improvements, staff does not support the requested amendment. And that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think we're good with questions for you. Hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Planning Commission, my name is Charlie Payne, the law firm Herschel Fleischer, and represent the applicant. It's always a pleasure to be before the Planning Commission. I hope you've all had a very nice summer. Certainly has been hot the past couple of months, but I think next week we're supposed to get a little cool trend, so hopefully that happens. As always, appreciate staff's diligent report and working with them on these matters. I guess we're just going to have to agree to disagree on their conclusions and recommendations this evening. It's been a lot of good questions. I'm going to try to address all of them with my comments, but just want to provide a little history on this. One, in 2006, when it was approved, the rezoning was handled by Toll Brothers. So it is not the current applicant who's at the table here. So to Mr. Thompson's question, it was a national builder who came in here initially for the rezoning. Of course, this is back in 2006. This Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors have amended proffers that were approved in the past, obviously because they've been too high. So the issue and cost prohibitive to develop. So the main question of why wouldn't they build the last 22 units, it's simply the proffers are too high and it's cost prohibitive. They don't have to do it. They could stop at 89 and have a development that would be viable. So the issue here is, and we would come to you in lieu of just making the improvements to ask for a reduction in the proffers. So this is not something of just pulling it out of the sky and say we're going to make these improvements and save the world. That's not the issue. We would have come to you to ask for a reduction anyways. We thought that given the fact that these proffers are pushed into the future to be paid, in essence, the last stage of the development, that may not occur. I mean, this simply may not happen at all, and the county would get no money from cash proffers perspective without even getting into the other proffers that are in kind in this project, which I'll talk about as well. We thought that in lieu of potentially getting future money, it would be a better option for the county to get what is now what we believe to be the present value of those dollars, if you will, the $825,000, whatever the number is today, which is actually less than what the cost is to make the improvements at the high school, to address a public safety issue, which we have heard from political leadership and the principal at that site. Of course, the kids who would go to high school from this development would go to Riverbend, so it makes sense as a direct link. So in discussions with VDOT, and remember, this Peter Hedrick recommendations from 2011, so talking about getting a plan in a CIP and a 6-year plan, it hasn't happened, folks. We can do this now. In fact, we're required to move forward with our permitting process and putting our plans together 30 days after approval, which is consistent with the appeal period. So they're committed and have every incentive to move forward to make those improvements. In addition to that, if we don't make all of them, then the old proffers apply. So you don't get out of it if you don't do it. So there's every incentive for us to make these improvements. In purposes of the improvements, the greater cost one is absolutely the one that's a right in, right out, and the extension of Old Spotswood Furnace Drive. The other improvements are to reconfigure the lanes. What's happening is the buses who are turning left are blocking the ability for the buses to turn right onto 3 because they're in the middle of the lane, if you will, because the lanes aren't configured properly. So that's the big issue that's coming off of Spotswood Furnace. So allowing the right in, right out will help alleviate that by extending the Old Spotswood Furnace Drive extension. And the cost for that is obviously our best estimate. I mean, we've got professional site contractors doing these estimates. Collins Construction, Mr. Collins, has been doing this for 40-plus years. His estimates, and he's worked with the county in many, many projects. So I think his estimates are fair and reasonable. And there's a lot of unknown. As Leon even stated, the construction plans are in place. It could be much higher. Whatever the cost is, we got to do it. So that's, I just want to reemphasize that point. The other point is we do have an email from the principal at the school, Mr. Troy Wright. He sent it on July 15, 2016 at 1:48 p.m. I have it here if you want to take a look at it. Responding to Mr. Lesser, who's also a partner in this project, opening up the closed road for a right turn traffic into Riverbend High School and then a right turn traffic back to Route 3 will be very helpful. With the new right turn only, we will see more people cutting through the old road rather than going down to the light so that the right turn lane will help with increased traffic turning right into Spotswood Furnace. I'm in favor of both these improvements. The other third option that was recommended by Mr. Hedrick is really, in our opinion, more of an amenity to some of the prior parking internal traffic issues for the students. It is cost prohibitive in our opinion because it will require moving utilities. And if anyone's been involved with having to relocate utilities, it could be very, very expensive. And it doesn't necessarily address the congestion issues that have been the concern of the school. So someone had asked earlier, is it a public safety issue or just a congestion issue? I think if you've been in public safety, congestion leads to public safety issues. If you don't eliminate the congestion issue and you've got a lot of traffic concentrating in one area, you're going to have a public safety issue. So we believe this will eliminate or help alleviate, I should say, some of those public safety concerns. Again, we think this is a reasonable solution. It is the present value of those dollars that may occur in the future for the county. As staff had also noted, the first 89 units were by right. This was zoned RU. It was 240 acres at one time. Now the project's about 170. One of the key elements of this project was to dedicate about 75 acres of Civil War Preservation Trust, which has already occurred. There's also about $500,000 in transportation improvements for this project, including on Route 3 and dedication of right-of-way on Route 3 for future expansion. There's also $165,000 on-site recreational amenities, which I didn't see any analysis for credit. So this is just simply one component of an overall proffer package, which is very positive. Again, we believe offering this to do now into the near term versus pushing it out into the future, which may never happen in regards to collecting those proffers, and looking at just the history of this, whether being feasible for the 6-year plan or not. When the recommendation came from 2011, and you got a principal saying we need to have these improvements now, you've got a developer who can step in to do it today, to me that seems to be a very rational approach. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and as always, appreciate your time and attention to this matter.
Any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
Did you say that the principal said we need it now? I don't have the letter in front of me.
They've been asking for, the issue originally derived in 2011, these congestion issues, whether it was Mr. Wright or somebody else, but it derived from their concerns at that site.
Yeah, concerns.
Which is why the recommendations came down in 2011.
And concerns, I understand. We have a lot of concerns everywhere. But I didn't read where he said we need it now. And if they say that we need it now, why haven't they said that to the county? See, I'm going back to just what I said a few minutes ago. Not approved on the 6-year plan and low risk feasibility, but still we come back and the principal is saying, we need it now. Is that what he said?
I think you've
Leon?
misinterpreted Mr. Hughes as saying about low risk feasibility. I think he's talking about getting into the 6-year plan.
Right, I understand that.
Not whether it's a priority.
I understand that. But we got one saying it's a low feasibility, and we got another principal over here saying we need it now. Leon?
The response I got from the schools was, ran this through Troy Wright, principal at Riverbend, Kenny Forrest, transportation director, and Sean Hockaday. All were positive that this might alleviate current situation at the intersection. That was the response I got on July 18th. So I think the schools would certainly acknowledge that these improvements would help their situation.
Absolutely. But I don't understand. If we need it now, that's where I'm coming from. If we need it now, I think the county should have stepped up. How much could the county do this improvement for? Do you know?
Well, our capital construction staff estimated it about $388,000 on the high side. They also, because of the contingencies, they also said it could be as low as $316, but they're not working from detailed construction plans, so that's why there's a range. Just as the applicant's range, because he's not working from detailed construction plans.
Okay.
So is the proffer, what you're proffering $449,000, or is it
Proffering the improvements.
the actual construction cost? So if it's $200,000, that's what you're going to
No,
proffer.
We're fairly confident it's not going to be $200,000. We're fairly confident we're in the exact range.
If it's $700,000, that's what you're
Got to
going
do
to
it.
proffer.
That's right. We're obligated to do it.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, Mr. Median.
a question as far as with Mr. Wright giving his recommendation or approval or, chiming in saying that he would like this improvement. Was he also shown what was being taken off the table, or was he just given a set of plans and said, hey, would you like to see this happen? Or was it, hey, in lieu of what we've already committed to, we'd like to do this instead? Or was it simply the plans?
I don't know the details of the conversation. My understanding is he's familiar with the plans. I don't know if he's familiar with this entire proffer amendment application. But again, development can stop at 89. It doesn't have to go to 122, which means there'd be no dollars. So, and if you take whatever that value is into the future, let's say it takes 7 years to build out, 5 to 7 years. Looking at the current market, it's probably pretty fast in that part of the county. May take longer. The value of those dollars today is about $400,000. So what we're saying is give us an opportunity to provide the values of those dollars today to make these improvements, which I do believe are necessary. I do believe are needed by the school system. But I'm sure, there's a lot of needs in the county that are equal priority. I'm not suggesting that this is a greater priority than others. I'm just saying we can fix this one. That's what I'm saying.
And then if I may continue, so one of the things I did hear you say that I was not familiar with was a $500,000 offsite improvement is also included in this?
Yeah, well, the project includes about $535,000 of transportation improvements on Route 3, dedication of right-of-way. It's in the prior proffer package, so it's required to be done. So those are proffers, transportation proffers. The value of those transportation proffers that are in 2006 proffers is about $535,000. So there's other value, and that's at the site. That's not at the school site. This is at the site. So there's other value to this project that just doesn't include this piece. This is just one component of it. That's at the end of the project.
But probably the majority of that is the ability for you to access your site safely.
There's a turn lane, right? There's a right-of-way dedication for expansion of 3. There's a litany of it. I could read them out to you.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's good. And I keep hearing about being cost prohibited. One of the things that we have to show as a county is what our numbers are, right? You can go and say, hey, what made up these numbers? And I understand, definitely want the ability for private business to keep their numbers private, but I'm doing the back of the envelope math here and trying to figure out how $800,000 on 122 lots, even though I realize you can do 89 by right.
Right.
You divide that out, that's $6,000 per unit. Because you look at the project as a whole. I'm not sure how that can be so cost prohibitive.
Well, there's a lot, obviously, that goes into a project, not to mention the fact how long the project lasts and the carrying costs of that type of project. Market dictates a lot of that. We would, like I said in the beginning, we would have come in here and asked for a reduction in the proffers. If you apply what we have proposed here from a cost perspective is about $15,000 a unit for the 32 units. That's fairly in par with what's been approved before. So I don't think we're asking anything extraordinary. I think the benefit is, if it's approved and we build the 22 lots, the extra 32 lots, we win. If we're able to make these improvements in the short term, I think the county wins. And I think the value is the same.
Thank you.
Anything else? Do we have anybody that wishes to speak at this point? Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak at this point? Okay. Any other questions or comments? I would like to say, if I may, that my kids go to Riverbend High School, and I travel this every single morning during the school year, and it is a mess. And the proposed changes quite honestly, I don't know if they help or not without a more comprehensive plan there. I suspect that it will be an improvement, but without more data, a better plan, I just don't know. But having said that, I would imagine that the school, and I would like to see the school district commit to these improvements as well, you know, the internal circulation, something from them that says, yes, if we do this, that we are going to implement this plan. I just don't see it yet, and that's a concern to me. Anyway, with that, is there any further discussion on this application? Mr. Burns?
Mr. Chairman, the way I'm looking at this, it's kind of a twofold thing. One is the priority of this particular transportation project compared to everything else. I understand how the 6-year plan works. There's X number of dollars, and you try to get the best bang for your buck, and they were trying to get existing projects. What I think is missing here and lacking is, okay, are we ever going to do this project? That's number one. And number two, is it really a public safety? Because I heard the applicant say it's a public safety issue. I've heard the school say, well, it would help and this and that. So I think, in my terms, there's really additional lack of information that I think is really needed before you can really, drill down to it. For me, it's just, if it's that all important a project and it is a safety issue, I'd like to have, at least as, it's not my district, but as a, citizen, I'd want to know some assurances somewhere in the future this is going to be taken care of. Like I heard staff say that, well, it's kind of a low hanging fruit thing, low risk thing, and in 2 years or whatever we got to do it. So my question is the problem going to be compounded in 2 years, or can I think we just really, what I'm not comfortable with is I want to make sure, and then the absence of the schools here concerns me. That's
Right.
number one. Number two, I think we need some additional, the absence of, some representative from the transportation group to at least have, where's this thing stand at? So those are the things that I think that are missing here, they're lacking, that I think would at least help us at least. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, with that, we'll take a motion.
If it pleases the chair, I would recommend denial of the applicant's request based on what Mr. Barnes said and our staff's recommendation.
Do I have a second on that? I will second that. Call the vote, please. Yes means denial. It is unanimous. Mr. Bullock did have to step away for an emergency. So thank you very much. We'll move on to the next agenda item. CA 16-0002, zoning update, outdoor lighting ordinance.
Floor computer, please. Good evening. This second public hearing that we have today is focused on the outdoor lighting ordinance. This is part of an ongoing effort that we've been engaged in to update the county zoning ordinance. And at this point, we're content with bringing this specific update to you. The amendment before you this evening has been through Planning Commission vetting. On October 21st, 2015, we did hold a work session with the Planning Commission. And then as of July 6, 2016, the Planning Commission authorized this for public hearing. So here we are today looking for your recommendation on the ordinance. So the outdoor lighting ordinance is really based on a county-established comprehensive plan goal to promote night sky-friendly lighting. The comprehensive plan since 2008 has advocated for dark sky or night sky-friendly lighting. This is an effort to basically reduce light pollution in the atmosphere and keep light basically downward shining. The county's outdoor lighting ordinance presently is fairly basic, and it addresses things like light spillage upon adjacent properties, but it does nothing to address actual upward-facing lighting that would basically light pollute the atmosphere. The ordinance in front of you replaces this comprehensive goal with measurable, enforceable ordinance language in response to upcoming proffer legislation that is now actually in effect. As you know, the county has lost an awful lot of its negotiation powers throughout the course of a rezoning process, and things like outdoor lighting, we have looked to make a standard within the county code, a requirement that would be applicable across the county to address these issues. And frankly, it's also a nice tool so we don't have to reinvent the wheel with night sky friendly lighting as well. Because historically, when we've had rezonings and proffers, each individual applicant was trying to address that issue in a different way, and there was really no standard way to address the issue. So this evening, we do have a simple to enforce by the zoning office ordinance in front of you. There's considerations for the airport overlay zone as well as the Fort A.P. Hill approach fan. Consider of the joint land use study between regional partners and Fort A.P. Hill that sought to have localities basically enact dark sky friendly lighting ordinances in consideration of their missions at the bases. The ordinance has been drafted to be simple and enforceable by the zoning enforcement office. We met with the zoning enforcement office numerous times, and they are content with the ordinance in front of you. There was concern initially when you look at a lot of standard dark sky lighting ordinances, they can be very technical, and we don't currently have the staffing available to interpret all of that language or are adequately trained. So we have come up with a language that we feel is enforceable and can achieve the goals that we've seek to address. The proposed language was developed with assistance of the lighting industry representatives. In previous work sessions, I had mentioned this. We had lighting reps from Musco Lighting who have done some worldwide significant projects. They've actually lit the Statue of Liberty, for instance. They were partners in this, as well as the Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. So we had feedback from industry reps, again, the zoning office, and Fort A.P. Hill. Again, I want to reiterate, this has application countywide. This is an effort to address this comprehensive plan goal. Specific amendments, first to the definition section to add zoning definitions of terms associated with draft outdoor lighting ordinance. Basically, these are terms used and, there are obviously definitions to specifically address what particular terms have been used in the ordinance, in the regulations. We've added a new purpose and intent section. This is consistent with the flow of the zoning ordinance in all of the districts and all the different subsections. The draft purpose and intent, though, for this, like I said, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan goals, and it also is complementary to the purpose of presently adopted outdoor lighting regulations, as I had mentioned, where we're addressing light spillage as well. The applicability section has been revised. It establishes land uses to which the code requirements apply, acknowledging that we have placed exemptions for things like holiday lighting. It establishes a review criteria meant to determine compliance with the outdoor lighting ordinance. In terms of exemptions, I did preview that briefly, but we have listed, and this is something that is not in the current ordinance, so I view this as kind of a move in the right direction. We've put a number of exemptions from this ordinance, including security lighting, lighting of flags, holiday lighting, and single-family detached and attached uses. That does not include, I'd want to clarify, that does not include things like street lights or community buildings, pools, community centers that might be within an HOA. But it is addressed to the actual homes, so we're not necessarily coming down on somebody's choice to put landscape lighting out or something like that. The applicability section has been revised. This, general provisions have been revised. It adds downward directed lighting provision. It clarifies for enforcement of lighting standards concerning adjacent residential properties and adds protections from direct illumination upon adjacent roads. Prohibitions, those include existing prohibitions on specified architectural accent lighting. We've had ordinance language that I believe was adopted back in 2010 or 2011, addressing the outlining of doors and windows in LED lights, flashing lights, things like that. So we maintained that, but put it in a new prohibition section. We've also had additional prohibitions for road safety to reduce confusing or line of sight conflicts. And with that, staff does recommend approval of this ordinance, and I'll take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Please, Chair, I have one. Would this ordinance have any application towards existing lighting?
No, in an instance where you're going, if you have light bulbs out or there's failing or actually, let me get to the specific language. But no, it is not meant to be retroactive upon existing installation. For instance, in the exempt from outdoor lighting section, the replacement of inoperable lamp or component which is in a luminaire that was previously installed in compliance with this division as it existed at the time of the installation or installed prior to the adoption of this division. The replacement of a failed or damaged luminaire, which is one of a matching group serving a common purpose. Those are all exempt from this outdoor lighting section.
All right. That's too bad, because I've got a personal problem with the mall.
With existing lighting?
Yeah, with existing lighting. I've got to go down a 3/10 mile driveway, and I'm driving straight to the mall before I make my turn, and they've got two lights that set out there, and they're set down in the field, so those two lights are right dead in my face.
Okay.
And I'm driving like this all the way to the corner. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
if I may.
absolutely.
Okay. The lighting are open, restaurants, businesses that say we're open, or some of them have the lights, around the windows. This is not prohibiting those things, am I correct?
The lights around the windows, and again, this isn't really, it's not really new language. Historically, we've had language that has stated any permanently mounted lighting consisting of neon or argon lighting, exposed tubing, rope lighting, or strings of lights outlining any door or window which is visible from the exterior of any non-residential or mixed-use building shall be prohibited. This is language that's already on the books. Now, the enforcement of that comes through the county zoning office, and it's ultimately up to their interpretation whether there's an issue with it or not. Oftentimes, it's complaint-based. But I would tell you that the ordinance in front of you this evening is simply maintaining that language. It's relocating it to where it should be in the prohibited lighting section. But really, it is language that's already, anything currently or recently approved would have been subject to that language as it is right now.
And because I know at one time when we went over the lighting and whatever, there was a very strong opinion of those who had restaurants and other things that they like to, some lighting. So it can, their business would be noticed and whatever. So I don't want to prohibit. I want to be business friendly. And that's my concern.
Okay.
And then I know something else that was a big concern, and I don't know what you have in here, but just like the signs at different places where it says eggs is so much, or this is so much, or whatever, are they prohibited?
Not with this. That would actually fall underneath the signage ordinance. There's a whole separate ordinance that we're not talking about this
Okay,
evening.
well, that's fine. Leave it alone.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jacob, I'm looking for it, but I'm not seeing it. How do we handle ball fields outside athletic areas that have lighting and such? Does this apply to any of that?
Yeah, I do believe it would be. It would simply be, and I'm going to use Musco, actually, one of our contacts that we did utilize, I believe they had worked with the lighting of Patriot Park ball fields. And it would apply to them. What we're really getting after is trying to make these things downward directed. So they're not, I mean, the goal is basically that if you have a horizontal plane, all the light is shining 180 degrees below that plane, not 180 degrees above it. And so that's ultimately the goal. When you have ball fields, typically, they're, you know, if I go to any stadium, and they do stadium lighting all the time, I think Petco Field in San Diego or whatever, they're on the light stands shining down towards the field. The only other, other than that downward direction, what we do have existing within the code, and the only thing we've really addressed with outdoor lighting up until this point was light spillage onto adjoining properties. And I know that can be an issue. And that's something that really should be enforceable by today's code, even if this weren't to go to board and be approved. By today's code, we have standards for light spillage over property lines. And the zoning ordinance, you know, that's in effect, and zoning enforcement staff should be able to address that.
And to be clear, so I'm clear, that these changes affect non-residential.
Yes, they're meant for non-residential, that's correct. The only exceptions, like, the only exception that I said with residential is streetlights themselves or community centers or clubhouse within a residential community. But, you know, if,
That's fine.
I'd hate to go down the road where somebody goes to Home Depot, finds a real cool light that they want to put on their house, then all of a sudden somebody's knocking on the door, you can't, that becomes really problematic.
Exactly, and that would be a concern. I just want to make sure that we're not impacting that, and
If I may make a comment, if comes on, if I'm understanding this correctly, as it stands, when we get a new sheets or whatever, they generally proffer night sky lighting.
Yeah,
They generally proffer. But because of the proffer situation, they may not be compelled to volunteer those lights.
that's one of the reasons why we felt it was better to have, and to have a standard ordinance that was on the book and enforceable. The second part of that is, when it had been proffered in the past, we were always getting, and like I said about reinventing the wheel, we were always getting a slightly different version of a night sky, dark sky friendly proffer. So each project, when you really compare them across the spectrum, they're not necessarily having equal standards that they're subject to, and sometimes, frankly, they're very difficult to enforce, because if the zoning office isn't content with the language or don't have the resources, it's really difficult to enforce those proffers as well.
Right, and it's been up to the interpretation of each one of these projects as to what kind of lights we're looking at. Some of them are
That's correct.
really night sky, and some of them are not, and
That's
they say
correct.
they are. Well, I like the idea of being able to have the dark sky lighting. Thank you.
Just wherever I am at a business, keep me safe.
that's right.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
wouldn't know how to
Yes, sir,
shoot if I
Mr.
don't
Burns.
have lighting.
Jacob, I know y'all deal with Musco when you were looking at the things. Did y'all look at and I'm not adverse to what we're trying to do here, but out of curiosity, the spillage, the downward light is no big deal. The spillage can be a real issue in the sense that it can also drive up the cost of the lighting. So did we look at like how much additional cost or anything like that may be, because I guess what I'm trying to say is every site plan is different, and every site plan is some of it's going to back up the residential, some of it to vacant property, and obviously if there's a resident lives there, you don't want any spillage, probably. Yeah, I wouldn't want it at least. But then something else you may do it a little bit different, then along comes that property's developed, and then you've got some spillage you got to deal with. I mean, there's some subjective areas that are going to have to be site plan kind of oriented, but in terms of just the cost for, to install the lights, there's a, reasonable cost, and then you can also drive that cost up more and more. Was that even looked at, or?
Not specific to the light spillage, because the main driver of this was trying to address the downward lighting and make it this night sky friendly, considering the proffer question. But I would tell you, in terms of the light spillage language, that again is enforceable currently under the code. Typically what happens is within a site plan, we'll get a lighting plan that's submitted by an applicant. And that is, the applicant chooses who the vendor is, the type of lighting, and they submit a lighting matrix to the zoning enforcement office, or zoning office ultimately reviews that. The lighting matrix will show where the different intensity of the light is over the site, and they'll make the determination whether that lighting plan, and again, that's really an applicant-driven choice on what type of light they want to use. Provided it meets that lighting matrix, the zoning office will either approve or deny or return for revisions that particular lighting plan. So we didn't necessarily look at costs specifically, because I still would say, based on everything that I've seen, it's been really in the applicant's court on what type of lighting they want to choose to address that issue.
Because I know there's another locality that tried to change their outdoor lighting, and once they did it, it was an outcry that was unreal because it was unreasonable in the sense like that. So I just want to make sure that we can still meet what we want and with the spillage and with the downward lighting, but at the same time, we're not being there's enough flexibility there, and it's site-driven and specific-driven, and it's in their court. That's all. That's fine. You've answered. That's what I'm looking for.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If hearing none, I'll open up the public hearing. Do we have anybody that signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have Lieutenant Colonel Jordan Garrison, the commander of Fort A.P. Hill.
Thank you, sir. Come on up to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Andy Jordan, the Garrison Commander at Fort A.P. Hill. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to come speak to you this evening. My family and I are brand new to the area. We've been here less than 2 months, and I might say that this is definitely becoming one of our favorite places that we have lived. I think my wife and I are on 10 or 11 addresses in almost 19 years of marriage. So thank you for your hospitality of the area, the local community, and the school systems and everything like that. We've really enjoyed our time here so far. But that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. But I just wanted to convey that to you, that we're really starting to feel at home here. But what I wanted to speak with you tonight about is share with you our support for Spotsylvania's newly drafted outdoor lighting ordinance. As most of you know, Fort A.P. Hill's most significant mission is to provide our joint warfighter with a challenging and realistic training venue and training resources. In turn, that is going to allow our warfighters to fight, win, and survive our nation's battles and our nation's wars on distant battlefields. That is the reason we exist. That is the reason we're at Fort A.P. Hill. Our training support, however, is not limited to active duty forces, reserve forces, or National Guard, or the Joint Force warfighters that I spoke about earlier, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guard, who conduct land maneuvers and training across the vast range of facilities that we have out at Fort A.P. Hill. But our mission support also speaks to the significant capability that A.P. Hill provides to the Army and the Department of Defense in terms of research and development to ensure that our warriors are equipped with the very best optics and sensors that allow them to defend our freedom and defeat our nation's enemies. The potential for light pollution from future development in surrounding communities has been an ongoing concern for us at Fort A.P. Hill. Key to success in military operations is the ability to fight and win at night. Having been on the battlefield many times at night, it is really good to own the night, and right now we do. So America's warriors and those responsible for developing the optics and sensors necessary to maintain our night fighting dominance value Fort A.P. Hill for its rural character, the diverse training facilities, and also the lack of strong light sources from the surrounding communities. Having been stationed at multiple other installations, I can tell you that Fort A.P. Hill right now enjoys what we're trying to maintain. Outdoor lighting that beams up into outer space or anywhere above the horizontal plane, as the gentleman described earlier, may be inefficient or wasteful, as it doesn't serve its viable purpose of illuminating objects as intended. We support this ordinance as it would reduce the impact of light pollution by controlling light spillover on adjacent properties and prevent glare and distraction from outdoor luminaries. Additionally, adoption of this ordinance is the best opportunity to ensure lighting associated with future development does not adversely impact our night operations on Fort A.P. Hill. Fort A.P. Hill has worked closely with Spotsylvania and the surrounding municipalities on compatible land use. The most recent effort is the joint land use study, which was mentioned earlier this evening. And it contains detailed recommendations, including a recommendation for lighting ordinances that relate to the prevention of light pollution, which will help preserve our dark skies. We strongly endorse such a recommendation and applaud Spotsylvania County's initiative to adopt night sky friendly principles of this newly proposed outdoor lighting ordinance. Again, I thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and also for your hospitality, like I stated earlier, as my family moved into the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your service, and your wife's service, too. I'm sure it hasn't been easy, but thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Jake, I have a question for you. Does this plan coincide, this ordinance coincide with Caroline's, for an example? The Colonel talked about having, municipalities come together. Have we not run this by them, have we compared to their ordinance to make sure that we're, if not better, to support the mission out there at A.P. Hill, at least comparable?
I'll tell you, generally speaking, and actually, generally speaking, what I've seen in outdoor lighting ordinances is they're much more complex, actually, than ours is. They get really start weeding down into real technical details that, frankly, do start getting to questions like, are we starting to dictate types of lighting or making this really expensive? This ordinance is based on directions, the direction that lighting is shining. It's either addressing light spillage going over property lines or being directed downward. It's kept very simple in an effort to be very flexible in terms of the type of lighting. I'll tell you, it can get very complicated. It can get very technical when you're talking about lightings and all kinds of different measures and where do you measure from and all these different things. And frankly, our zoning office was not content or did not feel that they had the resources and staffing to be able to address such a technical or thick lighting ordinance. So in that sense, I think it addresses the concern, the issue, without getting overbearing. Secondly, I don't, in terms of our immediate localities, I don't know if they've had anything that has addressed this issue, and we actually may be leading the way.
We are, Jacob.
Okay, well, that's great to hear.
I could just jump in here a little bit. The Fort A.P. Hill Joint Land Use Study was completed a couple of years ago now, and it involved Fort A.P. Hill and the surrounding jurisdictions. And one of the goals that came out of it for all the jurisdictions was a dark sky lighting ordinance. And so we are leading the way, and other jurisdictions are watching what we're doing and hoping to use ours as a model.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wanda.
Any other questions or comments? Any other members of the public want to speak or signed up?
Barnes is. Oh, you
I was
just.
going to make a motion for.
You make a motion? One quick comment. Excellent job on this. One of the things that I'm really conscious of is impacting people's rights and property rights, and having the freedom to do what we want on our own property. So I think we've struck a good balance here, and I congratulate you on a good job. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll take a motion on this.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve CA 16-0002 on outdoor lighting. Or is this an update, or do we really need to vote on it? Is it a?
Yes.
We do need to vote, yeah.
Motion stands.
Can I get a second? Second. I'll call the vote, please. The motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Great job. Discussion items, zoning update.
Good evening again. My second presentation this evening is actually a public hearing authorization request for dam break inundation zones. These are overlay district amendments focused on Division 1 generally. It's basically an intro language for the overlay district section of the zoning ordinance. And addition of Division 2A addressing dam break inundation zones, as well as associated amendments in Article 2, the definition section of the code. The addition of Division 2A to the zoning ordinance is meant to address a Code of Virginia requirement pertaining to dam break inundation zones that was actually enacted a number of years ago. The draft ordinance simply references the appropriate Code of Virginia requirements to be followed as part of the county's development review process in instances where development, that development is proposed in the code, is defined in the Code of Virginia, where that development is proposed within the boundaries of a mapped dam break inundation zone. So you have an instance where a developer wants to put down a 5-lot subdivision or a commercial building within a dam break inundation zone that's been mapped. It's up to staff to route that proposal up through the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and DCR's job basically to get back to the locality and determine whether there is a significant impact to that dam or that inundation, that dam structure and the inundation zone or not.
So any stormwater management pond is a dam?
The
Richard.
dams, actually, I think
Looking at Richard over there.
Definition of dam, was it a 4-foot tall structure? No, it's actually 6 foot. Okay, 6.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I may have some, can we invite Richard?
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
I would love to hear from him. Welcome.
Long time.
It has.
Yeah, the dam safety codes actually have a defined limit of the height of the dam, and it also has a defined acreage of storage of ponding water. And none of our stormwater ponds qualify for it.
Thank you.
So what we have here is a map that I put together. In the staff report, you'll note that I made an observation that in many instances, the dam break inundation zones that we have mapped in the county, and some of them go off the county and they share the border with Stafford or Louisa, for instance. But generally speaking, the dam break inundation zones that are shown in red generally follow what are FEMA flood zones. These are flooding zones along river corridors, Nye River, the Po. So generally speaking, there's already, if you're considering flooding zones, there's already overlay district regulations on development within flood zones. This essentially adds another layer of that. I would also say, though, there are areas where the dam break inundation zones potentially do deviate from the FEMA flood zones, so you have a unique overlay district that's created where if a dam, God forbid, were to go, there is potential spillage outside of those historic flood zone areas. Within Spotsylvania County, there is a fairly small dam break inundation zone associated with Mott's Run that generally drains towards the river. Honey Run Reservoir has a very small area up in the north. Keaton Run basically hugs the Orange and Spotsylvania County line. Nye Reservoir up here, obviously you can see the dam break inundation zone in red flows all the way down into the I-95 area. Fawn Lake, believe it or not, actually, that one surprised me, the extent of it, but it covers an awful lot of ground coming out of the Fawn Lake area as well. And then obviously down at North Anna and Lake Anna with the dam down there, there's some essentially backflow, looks like dam break inundation zone as well there. So those are the areas that we're talking about. They generally tend to be along river valleys, basically. So basically, the ordinance in front of you, what it does is it set out, like I said, consistent with the state code. It sets up a chronology or a query. It identifies if development occurs, as defined by the Virginia Code. if that development is mapped within a identified dam break inundation zone, it is subject to the following. Within 10 days of application receipt, the Department of Conservation and Recreation is to be requested to make a determination of potential impacts of a proposal on spillway flood standards required of the dam. The dam owner is also to be notified of the development within the inundation zone.
So after 10 days, there's no comment, no concern?
This within 10 days is basically putting the county on the clock. So we receive an application, we determine that it is within a dam break inundation zone. Within 10 days, we have to communicate that to the Department of Conservation and Recreation. The clock for the Department of Conservation and Recreation comes up here on the next slide. DCR is given a 45-day window upon receipt of the request to provide comment. If no comment results, it results basically in a return to typical local review and the locality continues on as normal. If DCR determines that development would change the spillway flood standards, the locality shall not permit the development as defined in Virginia Code or redevelopment unless plans are altered or payments are made to mitigate impacts. And those are payments that are really coordinated and set by the state.
That's not an off-site proffer, is it?
That's not a proffer. No, this is through an administrative review. If we receive a site plan for development, this is an internal process that we would have to be engaged in. Like I said, by state code, this has actually already been, this is an enforceable thing. It's just our county code is not caught up to address it within our own code. So that's why we're putting this in here.
So Jacob, one more thing, so I'm clear, after 10 days, though, if the county doesn't act after 10 days, then the application moves forward, is that?
Yep, sure. What the codes have stated now is that 10 days is we need to notify basically DCR to let them know that we have an application in. Usually by the time they get the notification from us that we have the application, that dam's already gone through dam safety. If it has not gone through dam safety, they're in violation of the state code. They have to go to them first.
Thank you.
Similar to what we do with DEQ, or yeah, DEQ and also the Corps.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
And actually, that concludes my presentation. Staff is simply requesting this evening that the Planning Commission formally authorize this for public hearings. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Burns.
Richard, with all the new storm water regulations coming in, this and that, I guess this is all to some degree, you know, what I'm seeing here is what I'm hearing basically is it's already out there. We're just kind of merging our code to address the state code that exists.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Now, if I'm a landowner and I have a piece of property, let's say is in one of these zones, first of all, so I come to you, I'll come to the county, I put it in the application, you identify it as being in one of the zones. I don't have a clue it's in the zone.
Right.
Okay? So I'm not going to be very happy anyway, which I don't have much choice because it is what it is,
Right.
because the state's requiring us to do that. But I guess what I am a little concerned about is, let's say the state comes back and they say, nah, we got a problem with this, you really can't develop it.
Well, the way it's set up, the state won't do that to you. What they do is they assess a fee for the impacts.
So they get that money.
Yeah, they'll get the money, but the money also, like for instance, our racetrack, we were totally surprised to find out there was an inundation zone impact there from Fawn Lake. But when we got them to do the assessment with DCR, DCR said there's no dwelling unit, which is clearly in the state code, no livable dwelling unit. So within that inundation zone, so the state said there was no fee associated with it. If a development comes in and they want to build a house or several lots within that inundation zone, if the developer does not change his plan and take those houses out of that inundation zone, that's when the developer has to pay for the dam to be upgraded. And the state will get the review fees.
And we don't get anything out of it.
No, sir.
All right, thanks, Richard.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? And we need a motion on this, or is this a review? What action do we need?
Yeah, this is just an authorization for public hearing, so I would appreciate a motion and vote.
So moved.
Have a second? I'll call the vote, please. And it's so authorized.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other new business?
No, not from staff.
Any other public comment? I'd take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Call the vote, please. And again, unanimous. Thank you very much.